Hi, my name is Ethan Chui, and this is the media component for my English Summative project. Learning to stand in somebody else's shoes, to see through their eyes, that's how peace begins, and it's up to you to make that happen. Empathy is a quality of character that can change the world. That was a quote from former US President Barack Obama on the importance of empathy, which is also exemplified throughout the novel The Mosaic by Nina Burkhardt. A short summary. The protagonist in The Mosaic is Twyla Jane Lee. The story begins while she has to do her volunteer hours by helping out Gabriel Finch, a former Marine that fought in the Afghanistan war. Twyla, being a pacifist, is very disapproving of Gabriel. He, however, is apathetic and detached from the world. As the story progresses, Twyla begins to empathize with Gabriel and starts to understand his experiences in the war. Gabriel eventually reveals that he has been spending most of his time alone in an abandoned missile silo, building a mosaic that depicted ancient long-lost cities from the Middle East. This mural attracts reporters and tourists, but also vandalists and people who hold grudges against Gabriel. After Gabriel and Twyla fix the vandalized mural, they enter the mural in an art competition in which they place second. The two fall in love at the end of the novel, but Gabriel returns to the war in Afghanistan despite Twyla's pleas to stay with her in Halo, Montana. Characters. The Mosaic is from the perspective of Twyla Jane Lee, who is the protagonist. At the beginning of the novel, Twyla is a photographer and is dating Billy. She and Billy have big dreams of moving to California to start a catering company together, as well as a restaurant. Gabriel Finch is the antagonist and foil of the novel, as he pushes Twyla towards character change, with his war experience clashing with Twyla's pacifism. Gabriel also suffers from PTSD from fighting in the Afghanistan war. The villains of the Mosaic are Billy and Jeremy. Billy at the start of the novel is dating Twyla, but they break up after Twyla starts to spend more time with Gabriel, whom Billy and Jeremy loathe. Jeremy is dating Jolene, Twyla's best friend. Conflict. There are three main types of conflict in this novel. The first type of conflict is person versus self. Twyla at the start of the plot is in a relationship with Billy and is a strong pacifist who looks down on soldiers and people who served in the military. Twyla has to overcome her narrow-minded pacifism to properly be able to cooperate with Gabriel. The second conflict type is person versus person. This conflict is Twyla against her ex-boyfriend Billy and former friend Jeremy, as Twyla begins to soften her initially harsh attitude towards Gabriel. The last conflict in this story is person versus society. Twyla fights hate from her community and also from online, where images of the mosaic are posted. Gabriel is attacked on many occasions by people that believe that his mosaic made from ammo shows support for terrorists. Topics. The first major topic in this book is cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is the inconsistency that occurs when one's behavior conflicts with one's thoughts regarding themselves or the world around them. People will often reason with themselves or justify either their actions or their beliefs to resolve the internal conflict within themselves. When Twyla has to help Gabriel, someone who fought in Afghanistan, it conflicts with Twyla's pacifism, which leads to an antagonistic relationship between the two. When she begins to empathize with Gabriel, it creates an even bigger dissonance that makes Twyla question her pacifistic beliefs. The dissonance in Twyla is resolved when she changes her beliefs regarding war and violence. Twyla then begins to defend Gabriel from criticism from their friends and community and looks after Gabriel whenever he is attacked. The second topic is perspective. Because Twyla's pacifism conflicts with her empathetic actions for a Marine, which is cognitive dissonance, it starts a gradual change in perspective to fit her behavior. She begins to acknowledge that war is a complex thing in which people have to make difficult and traumatizing decisions. Quotes. These are some quotes from Twyla displaying her initial narrow-minded beliefs against violence. Quote, I'm volunteering for a warmonger. She gave a slow headshake. Twyla Jane Lee. You can be a pacifist without being simplistic. Half these kids sign on to get away from something. Unquote. That was an argument between Twyla and her nan on Gabriel's reason for enlisting on page 22. Quote, what did it feel like, raiding people's homes and killing kids while you're zapping the bad guys, by the way? Unquote. Here, Twyla is shaming Gabriel for killing people in Afghanistan on page 42. Quote, ever torch insurgents and watch them burn, I asked. That's what I get asked, he yelled, all the time, over and over. If what he said was true, it was easy to understand why he liked to live in such recluse. Unquote. Again, this is an argument between Twyla and Gabriel on page 67. Thematic statement. The theme of the novel, The Mosaic, is that the only way to unlearn narrow-minded perspective is to expose oneself to others whose ideas contrast your own. This is achieved by learning to empathize with others' experiences and difficulties, to challenge and provide more clarity to one's own beliefs. Twyla feels conflicted when her boyfriend Billy asks her why she defends Gabriel. The natural hubris of human nature makes Twyla feel the need to continue with her pacifism. On the other hand, she also wants to be able to justify helping Gabriel build his mosaic despite his war experience. Quotes. These quotes display Twyla starting not just to empathize, but also starting to understand that every individual's experiences are different. Quote, "He was using his flashlight to guide me back up the tunnel. That's what made me change my mind and turn around. The beam of light coming from Gabriel Finch." Unquote. This quote was from Twyla's narration on page 67. Quote, "We don't know what he did there. Maybe he built schools and gave out food, or trained local soldiers to fight terrorists. Maybe he saved lives." Unquote. Here, Twyla is trying to justify Gabriel's war involvement to Billy on page 74. Quote, "Marines are on the ground. They witnessed the worst of it. And a war's a war. There's no war easier than another." Unquote. This was from page 254, where Twyla and Nan are talking about war. Relevance to human nature. The topic of cognitive dissonance in the mosaic is applicable to human nature. People often have thoughts and beliefs about who they are and how they should live, and those thoughts are often conflicted when our actions differ from moral values or basic beliefs. This inconsistency has a physical and psychological effect, and one will aim to resolve the dissonance by changing either their beliefs or their actions. Connection to society. In the mosaic, Twyla's beliefs in peace and pacifism are challenged by Gabriel Finch's war experience. Twyla eventually starts to empathize with Gabriel, but still attempts to hold on to her pacifistic thoughts. She justifies the two contradicting thoughts by reasoning to herself, saying that Gabriel was just helping local soldiers and saving children instead of actually fighting. The article I chose relates mental reasoning to the current pandemic. Here's the link to the article. This article talks about how cognitive dissonance and mental reasoning are relevant to the COVID-19 pandemic. We have heard much of the dangers of the virus, yet despite our understanding, we often still find ourselves taking unnecessary risks that endanger ourselves and others. For example, gathering with family and friends for a holiday is unwise and careless, so we might reason to ourselves by saying that we are vaccinated and are always careful, so one exception won't matter. Our rationalization of risks helps us to feel self-righteous. Connection to Romeo and Juliet. The Capulet and Montague families have a very bad relationship, and each thinks they are superior to the other. Both families are very antagonistic and condescending when interacting with each other. This relationship is similar to that of Gabriel and Twyla. At the beginning of the novel, Twyla is very patronizing towards Gabriel while helping him. Because of Gabriel's experience as a Marine and Twyla's pacifism, both act very antagonistically towards each other as well. In Romeo and Juliet, the parents of both children also don't approve of the relationship between Romeo and Juliet. Likewise, Twyla's parents do not approve of Twyla and Gabriel's relationship even before it is romantic. Thoughts about the novel. The mosaic had a lot of good underlying themes and topics that dealt with real issues. The lessons it taught felt very applicable. The characters' interactions were engaging, and the character development for Twyla was progressive and believable. The romance and love relationships felt very cliché, and were also very easy to predict. The issues that Twyla and Gabriel had to deal with were very simple and were solved easily. The vandalism on the mosaic and the attack on Gabriel were all solved in a week. On the other hand, something I appreciated about the novel was that at the end, Gabriel's mural only won second place in the MoMA, or Museum of Modern Art, competition, and Gabriel also died after returning to the Afghanistan war. This ending is realistic and shows that not all stories have a perfect, happy ending. Thank you for listening.